Hi, welcome into my studio and my new horse pastel video. I always do wildlife, as you know, but lots of you have asked to do a horse, so this is the reference I'm working from. Now, the reference didn't exactly look like this. It had a background, a very vibrant background in there, and I've cut that out in Photoshop to give more of a greyed background. And you can see what I'm doing. I've got pan pastels on the side. I've got my little dabber sponge, my soft tool, and I'm checking out the colours that I'm going to need for the blocking in stage. And what I've done is actually grab a load of these reds and browns out of the set, put them by the side, and just checking out, you know, what's roughly right. Now, it hasn't got to be spot on, and the thing with pastels, you need quite a lot of colours, whether you're looking at pan pastels or pencils or sticks, because, as I've said in my other videos, if you've seen them, we don't really mix the pastels. So we need to get the colours in our sets fairly accurate. And that can be fairly expensive as well. And that's why I like to show you working with pan pastels to block in, because they last a very, very long time. And you can also use sticks as well, like Rembrandt soft pastel sticks. They are very reasonably priced. You can get a set of those and do the same as I'm doing now. Or you could, you know, if you've got lots of money, you can use the Unison brand, which are usually regarded as one of the top brands. They're very soft pastels, because some soft pastels are fairly hard in comparison. Or on a subject like this, I could have used Conti sticks. And the set of Conti sticks, they call them Conti crayons, but they actually, make sure you get the pastel ones. And on some of my other videos, my first videos, the leopard eyes and those type of subjects, I've used those sticks and then blended them in well with a soft paper stamp. But in this case, I'm going to go on and block in the horse in pan pastels. Now, there's not really a lot of point me going through all the colours I've got on the side, because I just go by eye. And the whole idea as well of my videos, as I usually say, but people seem to get the wrong idea, is that I'm showing you the techniques that I'm using, so you can go and do what you want to do. If you want to follow along with this, that's fine, but the chances are you haven't got the whole set of pan pastels anyway, so there's probably going to be other colours missing. So look at the reference, because I'm not doing it perfect. I haven't, even with all the pan pastels and the other ones I've got, I haven't got all these exact colours for this horse. So I've got to get as best I can and make do with the best I can. And that's pretty much how it always is going to be with pastels. It's not always you're going to have the exact colour, and not always you want to do the exact colour. But the principles of what I'm trying to show you here. I'm trying to show you the blocking in technique is just the same as we do in oil paintings. We need to get something down. Now, some pastel artists, what they do, they start in the top left hand corner or top right hand corner, and they use just pencils and they detail it straight from the first stroke in there. They're actually like painting or drawing little tiny squares. Now, I find that quite difficult. So what I like to do, because of all my years of doing oil painting, I like to get a base down on there, an underpainting or an underdrawing if you want to call it that, and then build on top of it. So you can see I'm just using quite broad strokes, and with the pan pastels this stage goes fairly quickly as well. So within 20 minutes or so I'm going to have it all blocked in and all ready to start adding layers on top. So you can see these tools I'm using, they're called soft tools. I think it's SOFFT. And they look like makeup sponges, but to be honest with you, they don't really act like makeup sponges. They do spread more evenly, and they do work better with the actual pan pastels. But try all different things out yourself. Secret is, or a tip is, don't put too much down at this stage, or you're going to fill the tooth of the paper up. Even though that pastel matte paper I'm using is a grey pastel matte, as you can see, will take many layers. If you start to put lots and lots of pastel down, you're still going to fill it up no matter what. So, you know, we're just looking for that ghostly underpainting, underdrawing the impression at this stage. So you can see I've just, to apply the pan pastels, it's just an easy case of just dabbing into it, just like with makeup really. And I don't need to be too particular with this colour. If you squint at it, I'm just looking at the colour and the tone, so I'll have to put that lighter area in as well. And there's not a great amount of pastel dust with the pan pastels using these soft tools either. It does really seem to push into that pastel matte paper quite well. Now as you can see, I've got the reference photo really close on my paper. I advise or recommend anyone to do this type of thing, whether you're doing oils, acrylics, whatever, to get that reference as close to your subject that you're drawing as possible. It just makes, you know, looking at the colours and colour matching and tonal matching just all that much easier. It really does. Now I've got two references there. I got the one above me is just a slightly darker version, just as simple as that, and the one that's actually on the paper at the moment run out of ink, top right hand corner, but it was on that bit of blue-grey sky, so that didn't matter. And I'm just going to continue now this blocking in stage so that I've got that underdrawing done. Now you can also use these smaller tools, soft tools again. Now you don't go pushing too hard with these, they're a little bit fragile and you're going to take the surface of that foam or sponge off, but they're really good when you want to, you know, get that little bit more control. And I don't want to go over the black areas that's going to be the bridle, those leather areas, because I want them to be really, really black. Now although pastels will go over the surface of another, if you want something to be really black or you want it to be really white, you want to reserve those areas or get them in first. Now with pastels, I don't like putting a lot of black down early on, because I found then that that can actually very easily contaminate the surrounding areas, so that, you know, dustiness of the pastel will smudge out and I won't be able to get my nice crisp lines easily. So that's why I generally leave that black till later on. And also, you know, it's kind of like with layering, the horse is underneath the little leather straps, so I want to do the underneath and then I can lay them on top, as simple as that. As I'm blocking in with these tools, I'm not being too hypercritical about not going too much onto the black areas where I am now, because obviously as long as the pastel is not too thick, I can easily go over it, especially with a black. So I will be going over darker than this horse colour. So just looking at more of a browny area now, deeper brown rather than the reddy brown. You can see now as well how it makes the whole drawing or painting process much easier, getting this blocking in stage done. It allows me then to concentrate much more on the colours and the tones rather than the placement. I find if I was working on just one tiny area and trying to complete that before moving on to the next little tiny area, I think I would lose the general overall feeling of the drawing, of where elements go. It's more like, it'd be more like a paint by numbers type of process. And pan pastels can be used in so many different ways as well. Really frees up a lot of new artistic ways of drawing and painting. So just using a pencil just to make sure I don't completely lose that line on the top. And I do very similar when I'm doing oil painting as well, trying to keep that you know, drawing as much as possible. And that's going to help me then keep the accuracy of the work as well. It becomes very critical when you're doing things like leopards with lots of spots that are conforming to the shape of the body, to try not to lose those spots. Thing is, with pastels as well, what I could have actually done, thinking about it now, I could have done a gouache underdrawing on this, so that would have blocked in. Very similar, you know, if you don't want to go spending money on pan pastels, you could do that way. Lots of ways to get the same effect at the end. So a gouache underpainting, I could have used pastel sticks, pan pastels, a combination of all of them. Go a little bit redder then down on that bottom section, and then a little bit of it up here as well. Going more carefully around the eye area. So I'll come into that and I'll do that with pencils instead. Gives me that bit more control over it. Don't give up at this stage, because it can be, you can look at it and think, oh, things are not going very good, it's not looking very realistic. But this is the underpainting, and it shouldn't be looking finished at this stage. It should be a little bit messy, a little bit subdued in particular. That's exactly what I want. This is just the map, nothing more than that. So the white, I'm just putting the smallest amount on there. I don't want to fill the tooth of that paper up. I know it's all going to get a little bit muddied as well, the white, so I'm not concerned about that. And I'm coming in now to push all that right into the surface of the paper with a soft paper stump, and I'm using a Derwent one. Now they're rice paper, as I've said in lots of my other videos, and that's allowing me to blend. It's a soft stump. And I'm pushing that then, when I'm using that, into the tooth of the paper, so that's getting rid of any excess. Too much excess as well means I can put in more layers on top with no problem at all. Okay, so here's something you may find interesting and not see on many people's videos. I'm actually vacuuming with my HEPA filter handheld vacuum the loose dust off the surface of my drawing. So I'm not blowing it. You could also take it outside and give it a tap off just to get rid of that loose dust. That's the things we don't want going in our lungs when we go blowing, and it plumes in the air. So behind me I've got my room filter working, and this is my other way of getting that dust down. And I'm not touching the surface, but if it does touch it, it's not the end of the world, it's not going to hurt it, but I'm just going slightly off the surface. Simple as that. But you must have a HEPA filter, otherwise you're just going to blow that dust out the back of the vacuum. So that's the basics of the blocking in stage done. I've got my pencils by the side. These ones are Pitt pastel pencils, and I got a real bargain at the local art store, so I'm going to give these a go and see how they compare with the Carbothellos. Although, to be honest, I think they're very, very similar. If anything, I think the Pitts are slightly harder again. And what happens, or can happen then, is, you know, when you're doing those final layers and you've got quite a bit of pastel on the surface, if you've got a very hard pastel, it can sometimes seem to skim over the surface of the softer pastel underneath, and it won't adhere to it. So that's going to be something for me to try out. Underneath there then are my Conti sticks, and use my Carbothello pencils coming out so I can do a good comparison and see how these go, because there's lots and lots of browns in the Carbothellos, as you can see. So this is me, and I'm just testing these out, and I can tell straight away that, yep, the Carbothellos are slightly softer. and that's what I want at this stage. So let's try the Carbothello Black. And this is what art is all about, you know, trying out different things. Just because I've been doing oils for 20 years and pastels for something like 8 months or 10 months or something like that, I'm still learning with both mediums all of the time. I'm trying different things out. I'm not just being stuck in a rut just because somebody says Carbothello is the best for this or Caran d'Ache is the best. I want to find out for myself. And it makes it all a little bit more interesting as well. So just the very basics, and the reason I'm doing this as well now is I want that eye to stay in place. I don't want to lose it under the blending and blurring of the pastel, because that's going to make you know, this critical element difficult then to get just right. So it's good to actually keep the dark lines on something like that. And this is as easy an eye as you get, pretty much. It's just, you know, mainly dark with a little bit of highlight, nothing more complicated than that. And we'll zoom in and get into much more detail when I really detail it properly later on, but this is still just our blocking in stage. Could have done this with sharpened Conti sticks. You see I'm pretty much switching to the Carbothello most of the time, because I did find that black pit pastel wasn't laying down as easily. Seems to be very hard, the black in particular. The rest of the colours are, you know, seem a little bit softer, but the black seemed really quite hard. In lots of drawings and paintings, the eyes are really a major part, and if you're struggling with eyes, I've got that 3-hour video on oil paintings on my website, and free videos then on YouTube, and showing pastels as well. So there's lots and lots of details on eyes, but this one in particular is a very simple eye, so there's nothing complicated at all about it. But basically just get the darks in first and then start to go lighter and lighter. And I've zoomed right in now because it's time to get a little bit more serious regarding the tonal changes, the lights and the darks on the face. And the section I'm working on, normally with pastels, being right-handed, you work from top left to bottom right to stop having to lean on it, but I'm really drawn to this section. I want to actually get on with it. It's the most exciting part of the whole horse head for me. So I've got my reference photo bottom left and I've put it top right for you, and it's all still quite dark at this stage. So I'm saving, reserving the highlights, don't forget, for those last few layers for the real bright highlights. But I'll start to now go in with the darks, the mid-tones, getting more refinement. And what I'm using is a Conti stick. Now you could use a pencil just as well. If you've got the colours in there in your pencils, you could use those. The thing with the sticks, when you compare the amount of pastel in it compared to the, you know, the thin lead of a pencil, then it's much cheaper to actually use these sticks than wading through and running out of your $2-3 pencils all the time. So that's why I like these little Conti sticks, and they're ideal for blocking in, and because they're quite hard as well, they give a bit of texture. So they're not like a very soft pastel like, say, a unison pastel, the large unison ones. They'd be very soft and they're really good for blending, but when I want some texture like fur, that's when I like these Conti sticks. And I also like the pencils then, just because they've got that bit of hardness to them. And of course, because they're hard though, if you wanted to blend them, you can use a soft paper stump, and you can just go rub that into the surface then, and these will blend out quite well with a couple of layers, so they can still be used for all those purposes. Lots of people use them for sketching, pastel sketching, because they're like a coloured charcoal stick. And they're great for those expressive works, but I like them to get this detail, or well, second layer really going on, not really the detail yet. But you can see I'm looking across to my reference, looking for the darks and the lights. I'm squinting a lot when I'm looking at it because I don't want to be distracted by that detail that's on there. If I put the detail on now, it's going to end up being obliterated when I start blending a bit more and putting on more layers, so there's no point. You've got to have a good framework. I say it a lot in my videos. Hopefully it's not getting boring when I'm saying that, because that's one of the most critical things. Now, a lot with pastels as well as trying out your colours. What you see on the stick is generally not always what you're going to get, especially with the dark browns. You find they're not as dark, and sometimes you've got to use a black to get the tone down on there, and then you can just glaze a bit of the colour over the top that you actually want. So you're not always going to get that colour, but the vibrant ones then, the bright yellows and oranges, they do seem to be much more what you're seeing is what you're getting. Now it's very short hair or fur, especially on this part, on the under the eye area, on the bridge of the nose of the horse. But you can see that I'm still being aware and mindful of the fur growth direction when I'm drawing this in. So I'm not just haphazardly, blocking in colour now. I'm more, which you can do with the pan pastels on the earlier stages, or the pastel sticks if you're using them. Now some of this texture is going to show through most probably in the final drawing, so I'm being careful to actually apply it now in that fur growth direction. Using these sticks very much like drawing with a pencil. You don't have to sharpen them. They come in this square format, so obviously being a square they've got sharp edges already, and just using them in general as we do like this, you're keeping a sharp edge there as well, so you don't really end up stopping all the time and sharpening them. You see I'm blending that area now, and as I go further and further through the drawing, I'll blend less and less, because I want the softness underneath now, but eventually I want all the marks that I'm putting on top to show through, so I won't be blending in those final layers. And as you can see, it's all quite subdued so far. No highlights yet. Even the white that I've put down is very subdued and greyed out, as you can see, so I can put that white on top. Lots of beginners, they keep going not dark enough in the under layers, and then they wonder then what's gone wrong when they're trying to put highlights on top and they're not showing up. So you can see I'm using Conti stick now, and it's more of a blue-grey, so I'm using that for that middle tone highlight. Now things are starting to get just a bit more realistic looking already. I'm starting to put in these lighter tones. So I'm moving on down now to the nose and mouth section, which is one of the more interesting sections for me. It's got lots of softness in there as well, and that very short hair. So I'll do this part first, as I'm making my way down. What I don't want to do is get too detailed on that eye and surrounding area section and then find I can't match the colours to these bottom areas. Now, even though when you look at the reference you can see there's a lot of different light on the neck area, on the cheek, and a bit on the nose compared to around that eye area. So I'm not trying to match it completely, but I want to be using some of the same colours, keeping that unity. Otherwise what can happen, you can get out loads and loads of colours and before you know it you've got almost everything out in your set and you can't actually remember what you was using before. So I'm just going to continue now this blocking in. You can see I'm going around the areas that I want to stand out as very black or light as well. Surprising how blue it is on this part of the nose. So I put down a strong blue and then toned it down with a small amount of black. It's quite a soft area as well, so I'm using my fingers to blend now and then because I don't want that much texture showing up in this area. Then coming in with blue-grey, so you can see I can go back and forth between dark and light. Then just gently, when you just use a pencil, very gently like that, skimming along the surface, that's the equivalent of glazing in oils. So you can see I'm just putting in suggestions of where the little bridle parts go, the leather areas, because I don't want to lose those as I've mentioned. The line of the mouth, keeping that in there as well. All just underlayers still. And if you don't want to go too detailed, you could just use these Conti sticks all the way through and have more of a painterly final outcome rather than a very detailed final outcome. So pastel is very, very versatile no matter what style you like. So still using a lot of those Conti sticks. You can see how useful they are. You can use them on the side, you can sharpen them to a point with some sandpaper, either a point or a chiseled edge. I'm just using the Conti white as well, just to make sure that I remember to block in all these white areas. Now the Conti sticks, especially the whites and the blacks, are not as white and black as you can get with the pastel pencils. So I know I can go a couple of stages whiter than this. And in fact this stick is not even white, it's more of a grey. But it's, you know, re-establishing the position of where these areas are, these white areas, before they get lost. You can see in the area I'm in now it could be quite easy to lose the outline. And I don't want to be doing any tracing on top. And as I'm talking about that, that sheet of paper I'm resting my hand on, that's just standard tracing paper, nothing special about that at all. So now I've zoomed back out because we can have a look at more of the general overall appearance. And they're the sticks that I'm using most often at the moment. You see how I use that piece on the side just to try out different colours? Because it's one thing holding the sticks up to the reference photo. They actually look a lot different, those browns especially, as I mentioned, when you lay them down. So I'm checking all those little brown colours I've got to see exactly the colour that they are before I carry on and continue refining this horse. So this section is a little bit more goldeny, redder, and I really haven't got that exact colour there. So I'm going to use a combination of all different things. But first of all, I think I need to go a bit darker in that fur direction again. So you can see it's continuing the process exactly the same as I did on that front section of the face. And I must admit, since I bought these Conti sticks right at the very beginning, I think I've used them on every pastel drawing that I've done in some form or another. So they've come in really, really useful, and they've got a very big rainbow of colours in there as well. But the ones I normally find I'm using from them are those subtle browns and the sienna type of colours like I'm using now for this longer hair on the top. And they do seem to last a long time as well. And in fact, all my pastels have lasted a long time. You find with the very soft ones, the larger sticks, that they do deposit a lot of pastel down and they do wear out much quicker than the sticks and pencils though. Using the pencil now, pastel pencil, it's a Caran d'Ache one, a very dark brown. And I'm using that to actually give me my darker tones. Remember I said earlier on, sometimes you haven't got all the colours you want. So browns are an area that I've found with lots of my wildlife art so far. Again, a rich, dark, warm brown in the pencils seems pretty much impossible. And this Caran d'Ache one is as close as I've got to it yet. And what I'm going to have to do is buy some more soft pastels and concentrate on those dark, chocolatey and darker than that browns, because it's really coming up a lot in the wildlife art, and it's something that I can struggle with and not have them in my set. So you see I'm using it on the side as well to create that texture, going in that fur direction even with these, and then blending with my finger. Right, zoom back in. Even more refinement now, and as you see in everything that I do, really, I try to get that reference as close as I can. There's little creases all over it because sometimes I want to get that even closer, that section, so I just fold my photo. But when it's closer like this, you get to see it a lot easier. Now, bearing in mind again that I usually say that the video doesn't show always exactly the same colors on photograph and on the pastel because of the reflective light and all that type of thing. But that's irrelevant really, because you can see the techniques I'm using. I'm using that Caran d'Ache again. Now I can even use a black quite lightly, because I've got to go dark enough because I need to get those lighter tones on top later on. Now I don't want to lose the edges here of these leather straps, so I want to make sure I keep re-establishing those so I know I've got them in the right position, and I can count then the number that's there, because I know lots of horse enthusiasts want those things to be exactly right. And then I can have a think then, once everything is about 70 or 80% done, I'll have a think of what I'm going to do with this background, whether I'm just going to leave it as grey paper, or what I'll most probably do is actually put a light or mid-tone grey blue soft pastel blend on there. So you can see it's just little touches here and there, and the Caran d'Ache black does go quite black, it's fairly soft. So you can see the tip of the pencil between the very dark brown and the very dark black is looks almost the same. So that was the brown and this is the black one. And if you don't go too hard, you can glaze over it, which is just lightly applied pencil. So you can still actually see the colours that have already been applied below it, but it's just, you know, darkening the surface. So adding just that suggestion of a little bit more mid-tone in there. It's certainly not the highlight yet, so as you can see it's still all looking very subdued, a little bit dark. With the Caran d'Ache pencils, it's worth getting a dark brown and a black and a white if you don't have those in your pastel set at all, because they do come in quite handy. They are soft, and the white does give a real punchy white, so it's good for those final highlights, and perhaps when something like a pit pastel won't stick anymore to perhaps too many pastel underlayers, I find that the Caran d'Ache will allow me to deposit that very dark black or very light white on top. So you can see I'm using it very much just to lay down the darker layer before I come in with the carbothellos normally, then to put the lighter layers on top. And a lot of the reasons I'm going from Conti stick to carbothello to Caran d'Ache is simply because it's the colours that are in the set. It's not anything more complicated than that. It's just that I found perhaps the Conti stick has a colour that I think works best, so I'll use that for a certain area, and perhaps a carbothello has a colour that works best for another section. You can see keeping that line there as well. in danger otherwise of losing all the positions of where these little metal hooks and clasps and things are. So just giving the outline of those so that I know exactly where they are when I start to fill those in. See, re-establishing those darks. I'm going to continue doing that as I'm working along, just pushing quite hard on that pencil. Again, nice crisp dark edge. Making sure then that there's no paper seeing through in between the two, so I'm buttoning up that texture up against the leather strap area, the bridle, and then lightly blend in with my finger. It's not, because it's pastel matte, it's not going to blend away. If you use a smooth, very smooth surface paper, that light blending will just muddy everything and they'll all blend together, all the colours, and you won't be able to get the textures properly on there either. So you can see how I'm quite working this area up now, detailing it, and then I can start going down the paper then and bringing the rest up. Still got to put those highlights, mid-tones on there, but the important thing is to make sure I've gone dark enough. So little strokes, because that's indicating the small haze. I don't want to go using long flowing strokes. You see lots of beginners, they'll use long flowing strokes where it's short haze, and vice versa. They get stuck in a particular stroke they're doing with a pencil and they use it everywhere. And you can see now I'm doing some of the lighter tones that's giving that more of a shiny appearance. I'm using the grey pencils. I'll use greys and more of the ochre type of pencils for this, overlaying them. You can see I'm not filling every area in. Little strokes, little tiny strokes in that fur direction as always, leaving some of that brown to show through. So this is kind of like optical mixing now. So the eye is giving that effect now of there being a sheen on there. Just dapping rather than rubbing with my fingers. I don't want to obliterate all those little marks that I put on there. And then I'll gradually build up and go lighter and lighter in this area. So it's all starting to look a bit more realistic now, a bit more detailed. Going slightly lighter with those grey pencils. Building up the texture, building up the layers. Really studying the reference that's close by now. And obviously if you want to study the reference more while you're watching this, you always got the opportunity to print it out. Because even if I show the full head on screen, you're not going to actually be able to see what I'm doing too much anyway. So I'm just going to darken and refine a little bit of this top section just to kind of keep it all near enough the same level of completion all around there. Using that Caran d'Ache brown again to get those darker layers in before I start overlaying with some of the lighter colours. So exactly the same process by years I've done on that middle section of the face. That's why I concentrate on that a little bit more. And then going quite dark here as well, that shadow area, because I'm going to overlay the very light haze that's catching the sunlight later on. Probably right at the very end I'll start doing those real punchy highlights. I've got the selection of pencils I'm using most often kept in my hand, so I'm going to go searching for them. Putting the blacker tones in now. Even though on the reference photo it's very dark brown, as I said, I haven't got something that matches that, so I'm using a lighter brown and the black. So just carrying on with the blocking in of this top section. Same principle. Darks going in first, then going lighter and lighter. Building up some of the texture here as well. Now I don't want to go, I want this to recede a little bit, so I'm not going to go so detailed on this section. I'm going to do the same with the neck as well. I'm not going to go too detailed on it. I want the most detailed bits to be the actual eye area, face, nose. The bridle itself I think is quite important, where it's catching all the light, especially the blues that's reflecting from the sky on there. So that should be quite interesting. And those blues, obviously the horse itself is kind of an orangey general colour. Opposite down the colour wheel is blue, so that's going to work nice. And I'm going to create a mid-tone grey-blue background as well, which will hopefully make the horse look a bit more vibrant also. So all I'm going to do is just carry on a little bit on this section, and I'll bring part 1 to a close. So hope you've enjoyed it so far. Horses are quite a difficult subject. There's lots and lots of colours, lots of light is bouncing around, and different parts of them are really creating a nice sheen. Other parts are very matte. Lots of elements like the leather and the metal on there, so not an easy subject at all. And if you do them very, very small and try and go detailed, then it's going to be even harder, because obviously you can't get that very fine point on your pencil like you would with coloured pencils to do very small work. But then don't forget the bigger bonus then is the fact we can put those lighter tones over dark.